earlier in the morning, DSG, just clarifying some of the issues that are out in the public already. The DSG is specifically going to be dealing with matters of candidate selection and the case that we are putting forward to the Electoral Court. So I'm going to hand over to the DSG to go through the statement, and they will then take your questions.
Thank you, Pule. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for attending this media briefing. We want to explain that the process of registering our candidates with the IEC experienced major challenges on Monday, the 23rd of August. We are assessing the impact of these challenges and the way forward. We will be approaching the Electoral Court to reopen the process for at least one day for corrections and additions to be made. The challenges that we faced were caused by a combination of factors, many out of our control. First of all, the COVID alert level 4 banned all meetings for most of July, and this meant that more than 15,000 branch and community meetings had to be held from late July until the 20th of August to nominate and hold community meetings with ward candidates. This had a massive impact on the already tight deadlines we had to meet. I might just add that in some regions, they were still holding branch community meetings on the 23rd. And it really did make life quite difficult for us to capture when it came late. So from mid-June, the ANC had repeatedly raised the impact of COVID-related restrictions on meetings where only 50 people indoors for June and August and no meetings for July. We raised this with the IEC. We also, in our submission to the Moseneke inquiry, made this point, and eventually also with the Constitutional Court as we applied as a friend of the court. We joined the IEC and other parties in the plea to the Con Court to postpone elections so that parties and voters could exercise their democratic rights. Key to our and the IEC's application was the time needed for candidate and voter registration. Unfortunately, judgment has been reserved and has not been able to postpone the candidate registration process. As a result, our deadlines were very, very hard to meet. We faced numerous challenges. Many candidates' IDs were rejected due to the absence of voter registration during the period. So they were not registered properly in the ward where they were selected as a candidate, and therefore the IEC system didn't have them as a registered voter. That was one of the reasons why some were rejected. Secondly, as we were entering, the IEC system repeatedly froze and locked out our administrators and during the final few hours before the deadline, data already entered into the system was voided and had to be re-entered. The ultimate impact of this is that in around between 29 and 30 municipality voters will not be able to vote for an ANC candidate if the system is not reopened to allow us to make the corrections that we need to make, including what we can do about the voter registration issue. We discovered that because people who haven't voted before, quite clearly, quite young people, were elected as candidates in the ward. But because there was no registration date, it could also be argued that they could in any case have registered, wherever they lived during the period, but they didn't. And that was, I would say that is a primary issue for us that we'd like the court to consider. We also want the court to please consider the fact that there were restrictions on all of us, and I believe we're not the only party with difficulties. Our understanding is there are a number of other political parties who face the same problem towards the last hours of the freezing out, where we had entered the data, it froze, and it was not accepted on the other side, even though on our screen it would say admitted. So there is a difficulty, and we would like that to be recognized and corrected. We made the IEC aware of it immediately, and we also made a formal representation to the IEC to consider this. The IEC has written to us to say that their closing time was firm, and therefore they were rejecting our appeal, and for that reason we are going to the Electoral Court. We hope that we will be successful in our bid to have opened only for those areas where there were mistakes. We're not asking for the IEC to reopen the whole process. We only want to have the integrity of our list corrected, so that people are not going to be left without an opportunity to vote, which would be completely unfair to the voters, and really these are matters that were beyond our control. So that is that's really our prayer to the Electoral Court. We will present our papers to them tomorrow morning and await a response, and then we will report back through you to the public. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, DSG. We have opened the briefing to all other media houses on our platforms, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and we have also opened a line for them to be able to pose questions that they may have. So I'm now going to open the floor for questions for those that are watching on our platforms and for those that are here. Maseko and Natasha.
It's Maseko from ANC. Are you the only party that has asked for this extension, or are you aware of any other party asking for another day? That's my first question. Secondly, I just want to take the opportunity to ask about the politics in the Northwest. I'm sure you know already about Dr. Job Mokhoro's resignation. Our understanding is that he hasn't resigned as member of the legislature. Wouldn't that mean that now the new candidate for premiership then doesn't have a seat in the legislature, and somebody will have to leave the legislature to make space for him? And who will this be?
Okay, Natasha.
Hi, Mr. Latte. It's Natasha Perry from SABC News. Just a couple of questions from my side. Are you not afraid that this decision might actually cause a furor amongst other political parties? We heard that the leader of the EFF, Mr. Mandela, also casting aspersions that the ANC was manipulating the IEC system. So just basically lambasting the ANC for your internal processes, saying that you are probably one of the last parties, as you've indicated, to actually submit their candidate nomination processes or lists, I beg your pardon. Have you also engaged with some ANC members, particularly those in Pretoria, Ward 73, 74, 95, and Amansrao, Ward 33 in Soshanguve? They've had problems before. I think it was 2 weeks before you took us through the party's nomination system, that the community needs to elect them. Now they're saying that a certain PC member has actually allocated her daughter, removed those that the community had elected, and put her daughter in that position. You have similar grievances as well. Here in Gauteng, you have also other similar instances. I could show you the ones in Limpopo as well. So have you engaged party members around these issues?
Can you ask 2 questions at a time? Because I'm not going to be able to remember.
Okay, it's just
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Pule, can I ask those 2 and then
Yes.
we'll take further?
Yes.
Firstly, let me just say, I don't know which other political parties are applying to the Electoral Court, but we are. Secondly, on the issue of Northwest, yes, we understand that Comrade Job Mokhoro has not resigned from the legislature. That does complicate matters quite a bit, because in order for him to have become a member of the legislature, Supra Mahumapulo had to resign from the legislature and make space for him. The IPC is currently discussing this matter to find a way of dealing with it. However, they have appointed from the executive an acting premier, which is correct, and it's a legal thing to do. They have until the 15th of September to try to solve this problem and to find a way forward. And I imagine that what is probably going to happen would be some discussions with the caucus of the Northwest to find a way forward. It is not a negative thing. It happens in politics, and it happens all the time. In terms of the accusations against the ANC, over the last 6 times that we've had elections, we've always been accused of one or other thing. We stand by our word. We could not manipulate a system that does not belong to us, and in which we are simply a party that has the ability to make input, not change, not have output. Like all other parties, the rules of electronic registering was identical and the same. So you can't really manipulate the system. It's not possible to do so. We were not the last party to make input. We started making input on the Sunday already. What happened was that on Monday, there were some areas where the data came to us quite late. And let me say quite categorically, Tshwane was one of those, unfortunately, where we really struggled with the regional secretary of Tshwane to get information, ask for ID numbers. It was an ongoing struggle. With regard to disputes, we are continuing to hear the disputes, and we've said so, irrespective of whether or not the IEC closes the list and whatever happens next. We will continue to examine any outstanding, not any reopen any dispute that has already been dealt with. Many have been dealt with. I don't know the specific incident you're talking about. There were many disputes, so I could never know about some PEC member's daughter having been replaced. If it comes in a written dispute to the electoral committee that we appointed, led by Comrade Khalima Mutlanti, and that dispute is properly registered, it will be heard. The electoral committee is meeting at 10 a.m. on Friday to discuss how they will continue to look at the disputes. In every election for ANC candidatures, there's always disputes because the expectations of people are very, very high. And you find the level of competitiveness is extreme in the branches. In this instance, we had insisted that we follow a system which would also enable communities to participate in the choice. And unfortunately, that has given rise to many of the disputes, because within the branch, people would have selected 3 names. But when they go to the community says, no, we'd rather have that ANC member sitting over there, not your 3 names, and vote. Because the guidelines which we all adopted allowed the community to vote for a candidate of their choice. In many instances, I would say the community voted for one of the 3 choices, but where they didn't vote for one of the 3 choices, that's where the disputes are arising in the main. So, we will continue to listen to the disputes and find ways to resolve those. I can only say this, that it is always very difficult to satisfy everybody. And once you involve the community, that is democracy. It's the choice of the people. They have the right to make their choice. Somebody said to us this morning, are you running primaries? Yes, we are, in fact. We have decided as the ANC that it is important that people choose their candidates. Given our history, given the difficulties we've had in many instances, we took this very progressive decision. The other political parties put an advert in a newspaper. You apply, and then they interview you, and then you become a candidate. We chose a different route. That different route has created for us a number of interesting issues to deal with. One is that it does mean that the ANC branch itself has to become a much more agile, vibrant entity that is well known to the community, and where people are selected, the community know and trust. And the big issue here is You must be able to trust the candidate that you select. And, that's what it is. It is not going to change. Many countries have primaries, but we're a political organization that made that choice. It has nothing to do with the law. It is an internal mechanism for us to ensure that our communities are going to be able to say, that was indeed our choice. So I can take I can take the many other rapid questions, no problem.
Yes, I've got two on the WhatsApp line. There's one from Hotatso, Times Live. It says, how is the ANC dealing with the issue of Western ANC Ward Councillor Clarence Tabane, who appears on the list and is facing charges apparently for being part of the insurrection or instigators? He is out on a 5,000 bail. However, there are disputes regarding his case, with people saying the case against him is manufactured to have him removed from the list process. And there's another one from Lizega, Mail and Guardian, says, have you also identified in your list submitted to the IEC that you have candidates with criminal records almost similar to the first question? So far, we've been alerted by branch members of 3 party members who have criminal records, and one is facing court action, charged with being one of the instigators. Okay, so similar to the first question. DSG, when we spoke to Ms. Mugonyani, she had pointed out that there were pitfalls in your new member registration process, and gatekeeping still occurred in some BGMs. Have you identified this to be some of the problems that you were faced with? Last one. Have any branches and or members threatened to approach the courts regarding the candidate selection?
Okay, Pule, I don't know how you expect me to remember all of those.
Oh, okay.
Okay, but I'll do my best. Are there any criminal people with criminal records on the list? Those that we found were taken off the list. Definitely, I can assure you of that. The case of the West Rand, I can't recall whether the person was taken off the list, but we relied on the Electoral Commission, who interviewed people at a regional level. They had vetting teams that were interviewing people, and it is during those interviews that the person or people would be identified with criminal records were taken out. So if a person wasn't taken out, there would have been a doubt about whether or not that was a genuine case of criminality, or, as somebody has said, it could simply have been a made-up story, and that we will check. On the issue of whether or not our membership system had difficulties, we have 1.4 million members of the ANC. The branch secretary of the ANC is the person who uploads membership into the system, has the authority to do so. We have found that in some instances, branch secretaries were able to hold back the membership of some people. That was corrected. Because as soon as you can join the ANC online now. So if you join online and the branch chair or secretary had left you out, it will come on the online system. And what happens after that is that the branch secretary has no authority to remove anyone, can only put people in but never remove. So we have to say that in very few instances that is a reality. It's not a general problem. It was a problem identified right in the beginning of the uploading of the system. It was corrected. It was understood to be what the experts call a glitch, and it was corrected. So I think if now a person is left off the membership system, that person has every right to appeal to the organization to put them back on. The only time that will affect them really is when there is a branch BGM to elect a new branch leadership or to nominate people to go to a regional conference. And that's about to happen now in many instances. So we'll begin to pick up that if it is going to be a problem. But yes, we also understand that, perfection is the death of progress. And we're trying to be perfect, but often human beings are not perfect beings, and they do make mistakes. And wherever there is a problem, we are receiving letters from people. They say, can you check my membership? Anybody can check their own membership by going into the ANC membership app and typing in their ID number, and it will show them whether they're a member in good standing, a member awaiting the period of 6 months before they become a full member, or a member whose membership has lapsed. They'll be able to pick that up. So you do not have to rely on any person. You can rely on the internet.
Okay, DSG.
Well, can we go back to the SABC?
Oh, okay.
Okay, so let's just say the electoral court says no to your request, and the constitutional court also says no, then it's just a conundrum for the ANC. But if the electoral court says no and the constitutional court says yes, then does that mean that you'll actually open up the process again for your candidate nomination list, or is it final?
You know, we will never be in a position to determine whether lists are reopened or not. If the Court, let me start with the last question first. If the Court postpones the election, the IEC will determine a process of voter registration, which is what the Moseneke proposal is, that there should be a period of voter registration, and that would imply that you reopen the lists. That's the implication. If they say no, it's no. There's nothing will move. If we all go to the polls on the 27th of October, and we hope for the best.
Okay, DSG, we have got a question from Pule ETV. It says disgruntled members of Mohali City are planning to boycott local government elections, saying a wrong ward councillor made it to the candidate list. They claim he was not elected by the community. A letter was written to the DSG about this issue. What's the take?
I do not receive any dispute letters as the DSG. All dispute letters are sent to the Elections Commission and they are dealt with there. Even if the letter is addressed to me, it would be immediately forwarded to Comrade Khalima's team for them to deal with the matter and to have a finding. That was a deliberate decision so that we remove any subjectivity that anybody would have. However, I must say that yesterday we agreed as the NDRC, the National Dispute Resolution Committee, that we would offer our assistance to the to the Elections Committee if they wish to accept it. If they are, if they still need to hear a lot of people who are dissatisfied. But I would assure the Mohali City person that if the letter was sent to me by email, hopefully not on a WhatsApp, because that my phone at some point crashed. There were just too many WhatsApps that were coming one on top of the other, and my number changed. So if they sent it by email, it would have been forwarded to the dispute email address, and it would be picked up by Comrade Khalima's team.
Okay, DSG, there's another question here from Makolego, UFM. It says, during the last briefing, the DSG denied the ANC had asked the IEC to extend the submission deadline. Did the ANC know already at the time that there were problems with its list? And if that's the case, why the assertion that the party had its affairs in order? Second one is,
let me answer that one, because I've heard this accusation too many times and I think it needs correction. It's a bit sinister to imagine that we would deliberately fabricate something, and I'm going to say that to the UFM radio person. Firstly, if the deadline was 5 p.m., which is what we were expecting, on Monday, we would have done exactly what we did a bit later on. We heard via the news that the IEC had extended to 9 p.m. We did not ask for that extension at any time. Now, how do you ask for an extension? You write a formal letter to the IEC. You write that formal letter during the period of uploading. We didn't do that. I myself, I'm the person registered to make contact with the IEC. I have had absolutely no phone call whatsoever to any person in the IEC. I just want to say that very bluntly and very openly. Nor do I know of any other person who had phoned the IEC, as is alleged on social media, that we tried to persuade the IEC to do one. That is really insulting the IEC as well, and we don't think that that is a good thing to do. Because perhaps it's other people who actually do those kinds of things who believe that everybody would do the same. We did not. We know that we would have had difficulties with Tshwane. We did know that. At 3 p.m. in the afternoon, we knew that there would be a difficulty. When we heard that there was going to be extension, we then informed those who were outstanding that they had a bit more time if they wished to check their records properly. That's how come we then extended ourselves up to the new deadline. So honestly speaking, I mean, really, I just want to say no. You know, if you hear there's an extension, you make use of the time. And we did. We asked those, Sekhukhune, Waterberg, and Tshwane. I think there was also some outstanding from Ekurhuleni. We said, you've got a bit more time to find these IDs or IDs that had been rejected, to see if they could find what had happened to that person, or what maybe you transposed a number or whatever else went wrong. But, you know, to insinuate that we acted in a manner that was not credible, I reject with the contempt that it deserves.
Okay, DSG, the second one is the ANC suggesting that its failure to participate in affected wards would amount to citizens being denied the right to vote. If so, on what basis is such conclusion being made when there is scores of other parties?
The ANC is only interested in asking the Electoral Court to deal with situations where we had a candidate that we uploaded and that does not appear on the IEC's final list. We're not interested in wards where we didn't have a candidate at all. And we wouldn't be so arrogant as to assume that there wouldn't be other political parties.
So then the third one, how much of this ill-preparedness is the ANC attributing to disputes among aspirant candidates?
I think, in honesty, I wouldn't call it ill-preparedness. I would say that in those areas where people took a long time to fix their problems with one another, yes, it was disputes. Honestly speaking, we have to say this very openly, that some of our regional secretaries in some areas tried to change the list that had already been approved by the NEC. And that created a few problems, because the NEC on the 22nd sat too late at night, and we approved lists that were presented to us by provincial secretaries in the presence of their provincial chairpersons. So I think that we must say that this is a problem we will have to correct within the ANC, is this perennial view that individuals have, that they have a right to make changes, and those changes create problems down the road for the ANC. So, you know, it is difficult. We saw the announcement publicly made by the Regional Secretary of Waterberg that he had changed the list. And with due respect, he had no right to change any list for anyone. The list had already been approved.
Okay, this one is from Ndebu Mukobo, SABC. Says you couldn't have almost 30 candidates on time in the IEC portal. Are you taking responsibility for that, or you blame the IEC for your late submission?
As I explained to you, we had put into the system all our candidates. At some point, the system froze, and we then lost names. So, you know, of course, it is very interesting to apportion blame and to look for somebody to take responsibility. All we're doing is we're asking for the Electoral Court to provide us with a fair answer on what the facts are. And the facts are, we made the input, there were glitches, can we address those?
Okay, the second one, it says, you said all facing or accused of criminal acts were removed. Some community in Soweto complained about Mr. Mdladlava, whom they say was manhandling women, nurses, and teachers, and police protected. Despite, are you taking a dim view about this man as your councillor candidate?
I don't even know who you're talking about. Frankly speaking, such a complaint would have been registered with the ANC in Johannesburg region, and further on they would have taken measures if they thought that the accusation was correct. And one would hope that the women who were mishandled would lay criminal charges against the person so that a proper process can be followed. We don't accept gender-based violence, mishandling of women, rape, and any other misogynist action that would harm women or children in any way.
No, thank you very much.
You need to stop now, please.
We have opened. We were expecting that we will at least last 30 minutes. The DSG has clarified. If there are questions, you can entertain them. But just as a party for DSG, and I think DSG is right, DSG will not be able to know the name of each and every person of the 10,000 people that the ANC would have registered. Because this question kept on coming up. I see Natasha is insisting DSG, and I know you want to.
Okay, maybe as a side comment, or we could talk to you afterwards, because with this recent question from Mr. Mkobo, there's a lady who actually sent me some details saying that she wrote to the NEC, the IEC, the PEC, the REC as well. She attached a letter, the file with evidence and everything, and this case is not adhered to. So, yeah.
Has she laid criminal charges against the person?
There's a zip file with evidence, so yes, she has, with the police. So
okay.
I think this is, yeah.
Yeah, so if you send that to me, because I don't have that, then I'll follow it up with the Johannesburg region to see what they've done about it, and also with Khalima Mutlante's team to see if they had picked this up and what was done. I can do that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, members of the media and those that have joined on our platform, and thanks very much, DSG, for providing clarity.
Okay.
Thanks. So DSG, they told me this morning that I asked Maseko that I no longer see her at our briefings. So she said to me,